Acting with an Accent by Dr. David Alan Stern. The Standard British Dialect, Revised Edition, copyright 1987 by Dialect Accent Specialists, Los Angeles, California. This tape teaches the dialect variously referred to as Standard British, English RP, Received Pronunciation, or sometimes SBS, Standard British Southern. It's the dialect used by most educated, middle to upper class speakers throughout the south of England. And it's the pattern that Americans most often identify as the British or English accent. Lesson 1. Creating resonance and muscle impulse for Standard British speech. Before we study any of the actual pronunciation changes between American and English dialect, we're first going to accomplish the changes that take place in the overall resonance of the voice, the kind of sound changes that are caused by general alterations in shaping of the mouth cavity and in the way the mouth muscles move during speech. Now, this is a general change. You don't hear it only on words which have obvious pronunciation changes, but on every single sound that you utter. You see, every language or dialect has a specific point in or around the mouth where speakers feel or experience most of the vibration of the sound or the energy of the speech. This also frequently represents the place in the mouth where most of the muscle work happens during speech. Now, in Standard American dialect, which I just switched to, I feel a point of energy focus in the middle to rear part of my mouth, about halfway between the tongue and palate. In addition, Standard American speech doesn't require very much movement or very much muscle work in the lips or the front of the face. The lips just sort of flop around. Most of the muscular speech impulse happens in the middle and back of your tongue. With Standard or Received English dialect, however, the resonance or vibration focus moves forward. The new point of maximum energy now lies between the lips, in front of the teeth, as if the functional resonance cavity were shifting forward in the mouth. Now, compared to Standard American speech, there is a lot more work going on in the lips and the front face muscles. Exercise 1 for the British resonance, imagining the point of focus. In the first of several exercises to create the new resonance of this dialect, we are not actually going to do any physical adjustments in the mouth cavity, but we'll just try to imagine or will the sound forward to the new focal point. Now, this imagination technique works for some people, but if you can't quite relate to it, don't worry, we will be doing specific muscle changes in just a moment or two. Okay, we are going to count numbers in groups of 3. First, counting in the mid-mouth vibration of American Standard dialect, then shifting and counting the same 3 numbers with the front lip focus of Standard English. Just try to imagine the energy and vibration shifting back and forth between those 2 points. All right, let's try. Middle of your mouth, 1, 2, 3. You repeat. Now shifting forward in front of the teeth. Feel the vibration between the lips. 1, 2, 3. And you repeat that. Back to the middle. 1, 2, 3. And forward. 1, 2, 3. As we move on now to 4, 5, 6, let me have you add one more phenomenon. As you imagine the energy moving to the new vibration point, actually try to feel added vibration buzzing about in the middle of your lips. But first you feel the resonance and you feel the vibration in the mid-mouth on 4, 5, 6. Repeat. And feeling resonance and vibration in mid-lips, 4, 5, 6. Now again in the middle, 7, 8, 9. And letting the energy glide forward, 7, 8, 9. And now try the whole series to 10, both ways. First American, counting with me this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now with the new English energy between the lips in front of the teeth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Exercise 2 for the British resonance, forward muscle impulse. Now we're going to do a similar counting exercise, but on the English version, we're going to start each sound with the tongue and lips gliding forward a bit. The instant your brain says talk, the speech impulse hits your lips and tongue tip. Let's start with individual numbers. Say 1 with the normal American muscularity. Now lips and tongue glide forward in a very fluid movement. 1. Going back to the middle. 2. Gliding the tongue tip and lips forward. 2. Now don't keep your lips frozen in the forward position. 1, 2. Let them float back after each sound. 1 forward back. 2 forward back. Now the American version of 3. You do it. 3. And gliding forward for 3. Now all together. American mid-mouth muscles. 1, 2, 3. Now gliding forward. 1, 2, 3. Middle. 4, 5, 6. And once again forward. 4, 5, 6. Now as the cavity shifts to the front, you don't have to get louder and you don't need to actually speak at a higher pitch. Let that higher sounding resonance occur because of the fluid forward shift in the carriage of lips and tongue. It's now time to integrate the first two exercises. The next time we count, I want you to glide the cavity forward with the tongue and lips and feel the vibration in the front by the teeth and lips while you still picture the energy shifting from the mid-mouth to that new forward point between the lips in front of the teeth. Again, on counts of 3. Middle, 1, 2, 3. Gliding and sensing forward, 1, 2, 3. Middle, 4, 5, 6. Gliding and sensing forward, 4, 5, 6. Back to the middle, 7, 8, 9, 10. And back in front, 7, 8, 9, 10. Try the same thing with letters. You repeat each group. American, A, B, C. English, A, B, C. D, E, F. D, E, F. G, H, I. G, H, I. Exercise 3 for the new resonance involves something a bit peculiar. But remember, this is a muscle exercise. You won't be going this far with it when you're actually speaking. Remember earlier I spoke of English speech as having more muscle activity in the lips and front face. Well, let's activate that front face area between your upper lip and your nose. Here's how. As we begin each word in this exercise, I want you to dilate your nostrils a bit. Actually widen the openings of the nostrils at the beginning of each sound. 1, 2, 3. Continue doing all the things you did before. Glide lips and tongue. Feel the vibration moving forward, but also let the nostrils open wide on each sound. Do this while repeating each individual number after me. 1, 2, 3. You may feel that your eyes are opening a bit wider along with your nostrils. That's fine. But with each dilation, feel the whole front face elongating a bit as it stretches down along those creases that run from your nose to the corners of your mouth. So let's go back to groups of 3, widening the nostrils a bit on each word. 1, 2, 3. Repeat. Now, 4, 5, 6. Now remember, you don't actually have to flare those nostrils during real speech. This is an exercise to help you feel and activate those front face muscles. So once more, 1 to 10, dilating the nostrils slightly on each word onset, and keep gliding the tongue and lips. You count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, if it starts to feel or sound a little bit nasal, well, some English speech does have a tiny nasality, a slight carryover from some of the nasal consonants. But don't start talking consistently through your nose like this. This is not a characteristic of the middle-of-the-road standard dialect. Now, before we leave the concept of English resonance, I want to get off numbers and letters a bit and try it out on a short sentence. The sentence is, the cat is in the house. Try it in straight American first with the mid-mouth resonance. The cat is in the house. Repeat. Now shift forward, glide forward, feel the resonance shift at the onset of each syllable. The cat is in the house. Repeat. Amazingly, this sentence really has no pronunciation differences. The, cat, is, in, the, house. The cat is in the house, the cat is in the house. On these words, almost the whole impression of a dialect switch comes from changing the muscle impulse and resonance placement. Now, please do not continue with the tape until you have rewound and worked slowly through this resonance lesson at least one more time. Lesson 2. Pronunciation changes related to standard British resonance. If you study the pronunciation changes and try doing them without the new resonance and muscle impulse that you just learned, you would not succeed in producing standard British speech. You'd sound like an American with strange pronunciations. You already know that the change in resonance that you learned in Lesson 1 creates a lot of the impression of English accent. Many of the pronunciation changes actually grow out of, or are directly related to, this muscular change. So in this lesson, don't try to imitate the new pronunciation changes by themselves. Continue doing the forward glide and the placement change, and let the new pronunciations grow out of that. Now, there are 3 major vowel pronunciations related to the front mouth muscularity. The first is the English long O. In standard American speech, long O is a diphthong or double vowel. O. Oh no. Go home. But if you speak the long O while at the same time doing the lip and tongue glides from the last lesson, the O begins with the tongue further forward and produces an segment at the beginning of the sound. Oh, oh, oh no, go home. It's now a 3-stage O instead of a 2-stage O. Now, Americans from some regions already use a 3-stage O, especially in the Deep South, in Texas, and in parts of the mid-Atlantic states. Now, if you are using the English tongue and lip glide that you just learned, it is almost impossible not to produce the new pronunciation. So try repeating it in these words. No. Go. Home. Alone. Now, you will hear a fairly wide range of tongue glides from different English speakers. Some will glide just enough for that stage to establish itself on the vowel. No, go, home, alone. Some will go farther. No, go, home, alone. In some very drawn-out upper-class speech, the forward glide is really accentuated. No, go, home, alone. But for now, stick to the smaller but still very noticeable glide. Try those words again, along with some others. No. Go. Home. Alone. Grow. Solo. Motion. Explode. And now some sentences with a lot of long O sounds in them. Don't forget to generate the new pronunciation out of the gliding and sensing forward of the total speech resonance. Repeat these after me. Oh no, I won't go home. Slowly, the ocean rolled home. I wrote to Joe, hoping he would grow up. The rowboat slowly floated over the ocean. The oboe and cello sat alone, woefully echoing tone for tone. And now stop the tape and practice the additional words and sentences for this long O pronunciation, which you will find in the manual. The next English pronunciation that's related to the new resonance is on the short O vowel, on words like hot, got, honor, common. The short O has many different pronunciations in America. Some standard American speakers do short O as if it were ah, hot, got, honor, common. Midwestern and Western speakers sometimes round it a bit. Hot, got, honor, common. In other regions, such as Boston and Pittsburgh, the vowel is rounded and elongated quite a bit. Hot, got, honor, common. Now, the English version is a short, quick sound with the lips gliding forward and closing quickly. Oh, oh, oh. Try it on the same word list. Hot, got, honor, common. Don't draw it out too long, not hot, got. It's really quick. Get it out of the lip glide. Try it on some other words now. Orange, shop, lopsided, bobby, contest, job, on. The word on is very short, but think of how many times you use it while speaking. Now try it in these sentences. Bob had the option of sleeping on the cot. Sir Lancelot travelled non-stop to Camelot. The obstinate opera singer was preoccupied. Beckett was positive about the honour of God. The rocks and logs were on top of the cot. There's a category of words where the short O is followed by the letters S or TH or F or NG, words like lost, cloth, coffee, song. In American speech, these words fall into the next pronunciation group we'll study. But in England, these are still short O words. Take the same quick, short O sound that you just learned. Again, take the pronunciation right out of the lip and tongue impulse and repeat after me. Coffee, lofty, cloth, moth, lost, moss, wrong, song. Try it now in these sentences. Lost boys often sell cloth. And it's not necessary to say often. Often is fine. The dog was wrong to kill the moth. The loft smelled of strong coffee. Now, there are some situations where words spelled with the letter A will take this short O pronunciation. This is especially true of 4 words starting with the letter W. Repeat. What? Want. Wash. Watch. What do you want to watch while doing the washing up? And again, before continuing, stop the tape and practice the additional words and sentences for short O, which you will find in the manual. Now, the last of this vowel group is the broadest, most pushed forward vowel in English speech. It is the or sound in such words as ball, autumn, awful. Now, this vowel can be spelled many different ways. A-U as in Paul and autumn. A-W as in awful and flawless. A-L as in call and wall. But a silent L after the letter A will also trigger the vowel in words like walk and talk. Occasionally, you'll even find this vowel spelled O-U, as in thought and brought. Now, these same groups all stay together in American dialect, too. In some regions, Americans round it slightly. Paul talked in the autumn. In other areas, as well as Canada, it's completely unrounded. Paul talked in the autumn. In New York City, it really pumps. Paul talked in the autumn. Now, in English standard speech, your lips really glide forward quite far. You round them fairly tightly, and the opening or the circle that's made with your lips should be very narrow indeed, no wider than that of a normal-sized pencil. Or. Let's try it on all the words that we just used as examples. Repeat them. Paul. Autumn. Awful. Flawless. Call. Walk. Wall. Talk. Thought. Brought. Now let's try it in these sentences. The tall author walked awkwardly. He stalked the ball, then vaulted. He thought he saw the autumn leaves falling. The awful sauce made Paul pause. He bought a shawl and brought it home from the mall. And now, once again, stop the tape and practice the additional drills for this vowel, which you will find in the manual. You may also wish to repeat all of Lesson 2 before continuing with the tape. Lesson 3, English pitch glides. When standard American speech is spoken expressively, the pitch tends to move in large upward jumps, followed by smaller downward steps. Pitch always seems to be changing between syllables and not during syllables. So, with a couple of small exceptions, this American dialect doesn't really use pitch glides during vowels, inside the syllables. But when received English is spoken expressively, it uses pitch glides frequently. First, when there are particularly important words that you or your character want to stress, there will be a tendency to elongate the stressed syllable of that word while sliding upward in pitch. Now, don't do this on every word or on all the phrases, because it will really sound put on and stereotyped. But in the context of normal conversation, go right ahead and stress those particularly important words by sliding up on their stressed syllables. Try it on the following sentences. Of course, these are my choices of which words to stress, and I will exaggerate slightly. You could easily make different choices. I just don't know. I am not going to argue with you. Don't lose your heads in the Tower of London. He gave an incredible speech at Hyde Park Corner. Now, even when there aren't a lot of really expressive upward glides, the English use a bit more downward glide than Americans do. Let's use the words of the national anthem to illustrate this, alternating American and English pitch styles. You repeat the contrasts, stepping down most of the time in American and permitting yourself more freedom to slide down on the stressed syllables in the English version. God save our gracious Queen. God save our gracious Queen. Long live our noble Queen. Long live our noble Queen. God save the Queen. God save the Queen. Now, don't forget to combine these new pitch glides with the forward lip and tongue glides that you've been doing from the start. Continuing. Send her victorious. Send her victorious. Happy and glorious. Happy and glorious. Long to reign over us. Long to reign over us. God save the Queen. God save the Queen. Now, when you are acting with this accent, or when you're trying to use it in spontaneous conversation, these pitch glides should become some of your tools for making ideas clear to your listeners. Don't do the glides just because the teacher told you to on the tape. Use the pitch glides to bring your ideas and actions clearly into the ears, minds, and hearts of the other characters, either in the script or in real-life situations where you are practicing the dialect. Now rewind and repeat this lesson several times before continuing. This is the end of side 1. Welcome back to side 2. This is lesson number 4, more changes in English vowel pronunciations. In lesson number 2, we learned 3 totally consistent vowel changes. Long O, short O, and broad O. They always take those pronunciations. But there are several English dialect vowels which differ from their American counterparts only some of the time in certain categories of words. So let's examine those in this lesson. The first is the long E sound. It usually stays the same long E, like in the words English, speech, agreement. But when words end in this sound, especially when the spelling ends with the letter Y or the letters LY, Americans usually keep the full E sound, Mary, while the English soften it almost to an I sound. Instead of Mary is very pretty, you would say Mary is very pretty. I. So repeat it after me on these words. Mary. Mostly. Pretty. You hear that I instead of the E? Okay, good. Now don't forget to continue doing the forward muscle impulse and resonance. More words. 20. 30. Some of you might find it easier to soften this vowel if you do a little pitch glide, either up or down, as you're getting into the vowel. 20. 30. Foggy. Lovely. Now try it in these sentences, and if you want, you can also use some pitch glides in the sentences. Repeat them after me. Everybody has the ability to be mighty. Frankly, that's a thorny path. Generally, Mr. Hornsby's parties are lovely. By the way, if one of those Y or LY endings leads right into a word that starts with a vowel sound, you probably won't be able to soften it quite as much as we just did. The result will be about halfway between this I and the full American E. For example, and you repeat these, Mary is lovely. He's very active. Some lovely apples. And now practice the additional drills for this vowel from the manual before continuing with the rest of this lesson. The next sound is a special category of the one we just did. When American words end in the sounds airy, airy, or Ori, there's not just a softening of the E, but also a shift in syllable stress. Americans stress the syllable containing the R. Necessary, commissary, secretary, ordinary. The English almost eliminate that stressed vowel at the same time that they soften the E to I. So, an earlier syllable now gets the stress. Repeat them after me. Necessary. Commissary. Not commissary, commissary. Secretary. Ordinary. Try it in these sentences. Remember to use the front mouth muscularity and perhaps also some pitch glides. Was that revolutionary statement necessary? Many missionaries come from Salisbury Cathedral. The commissary has extraordinary food categories. Again, stop the tape and practice the additional drills for the Y and LY endings which you will find in the manual. Now we come to an extremely important vowel pronunciation change, and one that accounts for so many errors when American actors are playing English characters. I'm talking about the occasional changing of the vowel A to R, like in I can't find my glasses, becoming I can't find my glasses. Some American actors unfortunately want to change this R to R every time it occurs. They'll say things like, baseball bats, dogs and carts, yes I can. And all three of those pronunciations were wrong. They should have been bat, cat and can. In reality, this vowel changes only in a small percentage of words, specifically when the vowel R comes immediately prior to certain consonants or consonant clusters. So let's look individually at each of the consonant triggers for this change. Unfortunately, there are a lot of exceptions. On many words, the pronunciation does not change in spite of the consonant that follows. So I've listed the most common of these exceptions in the manual. But here are the basic rules. First, before the F sound, regardless of how it's spelled, the vowel does change. Repeat. After. Laugh. Half. Calf. Also before the sound of S, either alone or with another consonant following the S. You repeat. Fast. Last. Rascal. Repast. Pass. Let me point out one weird exception here. Although P-A-S-S is pronounced pass, passenger and passage are not correct pronunciations. In those words, the vowel remains A, so we have the sentence, the passenger passed through the passage. Strange language, this. The change often happens before voiceless TH sounds. Repeat. Bath. Pathway. Wrath. It also happens before some voiced THs. For example, rather is always pronounced with R. Lather and lava are optional, both are correct. But gather never changes to gather. The change is also triggered by the NS sound combination, usually spelled with the letters NC, as in the following words. You repeat. Dance. Chancellor. Lancelot. France. It also changes most of the time before the NT consonant cluster. Advantage. Plant. Chant. Can't. While we're on the word can't, I might add that the word can, C-A-N, does not change to R. The N alone rarely triggers the change. This leads to the correctly pronounced phrases, yes, I can, but no, you can't. Now that's it for the consonants and clusters which trigger the change most frequently. There are a few words where the ND combination triggers the change. Repeat them. Commander. Demand. Slander. But most of the time, AND remains with the A vowel, like in and, grand, stand. Now, there are a few individual words containing none of these triggers, but where the vowel still does change to R. Here are the most frequent of these exceptions. Banana. Example. Sample. The words ranch and branch often change, although ranch and branch are still acceptable options. Now, there are many more drills for each of these a to r changes, as well as many exceptions to the rule listed in the manual. But when in doubt, you might want to consult Every Man's English Pronouncing Dictionary by Daniel Jones, which is available at most theatre bookshops. Let's look now at just a few sentences containing this vowel change. You repeat? The rascal Chancellor demanded the castle. At last, the commander's repast is half ready. I just can't ask her for a dance. Okay, now we have to practice words where the a does not change to r, just in case some of you have been trying to make this pronunciation change all of the time. On these words and phrases, of course, keep the English resonance and all of the other appropriate pronunciation changes. Also, make sure that you don't use the pronunciation that's heard in many American regional dialects. Don't do can, hand, bet. Keep your tongue down in the back on these sounds. Repeat them. Can, hand, bat, admire, sandwich. Now let's try those in some sentences. My batting hand soaks in a vat of apple cider. Stan and Joanne sat in back of the bank instead of standing. And finally, let's mix and match. Here are sentences where some words contain this change and others don't. That man is dancing divinely. Last night, the cat transferred the kittens to the back room. He comes from a class of radical rascals. Ask any bashful man to dance and accept his answer. Okay, let's look at one more occasional vowel pronunciation, which isn't totally foreign to American speech, but the English are far more likely to use it than Americans. It's the use of the y glide before the vowel oo in many situations where the oo is not spelled with the double O letters. D-oo, as in duke, not duke, but duke, duel, dew. N-oo, as in neutral, nuclear, news. T-oo, as in Tuesday, tune, tunic. And L-oo, Americans never do this after the L, but the English do, lubricate, ludicrous, lunatic. Again, you might do well to repeat this whole lesson before continuing with the tape. Lesson 5, the English R drop. Of course, the English pronounce the R sound when it comes before a vowel in words like red, rose, frank, truck. But except in the English West Country, when the letter R follows a vowel sound, the R simply disappears. Let's look at that English R drop with all the different vowel stems. First, the simple ER ending. You repeat them. Runner, player. Not runner, player, but runner, player. Helper, sweeter, heavier. And in these sentences, the runner staggered over the hill and became a walker. My mother, father, sister, and brother thank you again. Now, in American dialect, when the sound comes before the end of a word, it's pronounced the same as the final ER. For example, in Mother Earth, the two are the same. Mother Earth. Mother Earth. But in English speech, the second one gets pushed forward into the lips a bit more. Earth, earth, moving somewhat toward the German umlaut sound. Try it on the following. Earth, word, work, curse, thirsty, burn. Sentences. Ernest was very dirty and thirsty. Searching for the curse words was hard work. The AR combination, R, becomes ah, star, car, alarm, hard, march. He parked the car down in the yard by the barn. Arthur played cards in the cardinal's garden. The OR combination, or, becomes identical to the pushed OR vowel, like in awful. Repeat on these. For, door, chores, more, important. Sentences. The exhaust that poured forth caused sore throats. At 3:45, the sportsman adorned the shore. The R drop from the ear sound leaves the diphthong ear, clear, beer, here, tears, career. Never fear, the wheel to steer is near the gearbox. I'm sincere about wanting the deer to appear next year. The R drop from the air sound leaves the diphthong air, hair, pear, barely, everywhere, scared. Where did the rare polar bear go? He carefully prepared to go upstairs. The R drop from the oor sound leaves the diphthong oor, as in sure, cure, endure, secure. Are you sure you can endure the long tour? Can you ensure that the poor man can cure his headache? Oh, Oh dear, there are some exceptions here. You can't really drop an R when it comes between two vowel sounds. You can't very well say they, sigh, and miracle instead of very, sorry, and miracle. In a lot of English speech, the R simply comes back. You keep the English muscle glide in pronunciation and do a normal R sound. Try it. Very, sorry, miracle, carry. The same thing happens when the R drop is followed by a word that starts with a vowel. Not saw at me, but saw at me. A pair of socks. I prefer it. The year after. Now, in some very aristocratic speech, you'll hear a tapping of the R, a sort of a D substitution. Very, sorry, miracle, saw at me, a pair of socks. This is a bit more difficult to do, though, and most English speakers simply return to the simple R glide in these medial positions. Now repeat this lesson and practice all of the additional drills for R drops in the manual. Lesson 6, Isolated Sound Changes. Let's move on and examine some changes in pronunciation of the T, as well as some isolated words which don't really follow any rules. Okay, in standard American dialect, the T doesn't explode much at the end of words. We'll often say hit, get, sit. The English do a complete explosion on those sounds. Hit, get, sit, at. In fact, when the next word starts with a vowel, the T often seems to carry over to the next word. Get out. Sit on the chair. I don't like it at all. And of course, the English don't change the medial T's to D's the way Americans do in words like matter, later, better. Keep that nice, clean T sound. Matter. Later. Sitting. Better. After. And on this sentence, the beautiful British writer scattered the letters. And finally, let's look at some words which don't follow any rules in their pronunciation. Americans usually say again and against. The English will sometimes do that, but they will usually say again and against. Americans always pronounce B-E-E-N as if it were B-I-N. I've been to the store. The English often use the long E. I've been there. How long has it been? The word clerk is not clerk in England. It's clerk, just like the family name, the clerk at the store. Gilbert and Sullivan even rhymed it in HMS Pinafore. As office boy, I made such a mark that they gave me the post of a junior clerk. Figure changes to figure. The y comes out. He cut a striking figure. Garage changes to garage, with a different stress. Garage. Americans usually say either and neither. Occasionally we'll say either and neither. The opposite is true in England. You will usually hear either and neither. Process takes the long O, becoming process. Hostile missiles in America become hostile missiles in England. Laboratory doesn't do a normal truncation to laboratory. It changes stress and becomes laboratory. Schedule changes consonant sound completely, becoming schedule. Tomatoes, of course, are tomatoes, but potatoes stay the same, so we will have a potato and tomato salad. And finally, the American weekend in the country changes syllable stress and becomes an English weekend. in the country. Lesson 7, Coach Drill. Please look at the last few pages of your manual for the transcript of the passage called An Important Message for Dialect Actors. I have used the simple markings that I introduced earlier in the manual to note the pronunciation changes. I will first read the passage slowly, especially emphasizing all of the words which change pronunciation. So please follow along with me in the manual. Most actors forget the rest of their craft when attempting dialect roles. Their purpose becomes putting on the English accent rather than creating moment-to-moment actions and reactions of a real person who has always spoken with the English muscle impulses, intonations, and word pronunciations. I find it necessary to remind even the finest actors to remember the other fundamentals, to discover the same actions, beats, units, whatever terminology you've used for it or for it, and simply play those moments through the new speech reflexes. It's perfectly satisfactory to return whenever necessary to an American or American accent to help you discover those moments. Then you should rediscover the same or similar moments with the new physical traits of English speech. Okay, it's your turn. Turn off the tape, read the passage very slowly from the manual, making sure to use the new pronunciations. And don't forget to let them grow out of the tone placement and pitch glides. All right, turn off the tape. Welcome back. I will now speak the passage as if I was simply doing it as a regular part of my remarks to you. You know, most actors forget the rest of their craft when attempting dialect roles. Their purpose becomes putting on the English accent rather than creating moment-to-moment actions and reactions of a real person who has always spoken with English muscle impulses, intonations, and word pronunciations. I find it necessary to remind even the finest actors to remember the other fundamentals, to discover the same actions, beats, units, whatever terminology you've used for it, and simply play those moments through the new speech reflexes. It's perfectly satisfactory to return whenever necessary to an American accent to help you discover those moments. Then you should rediscover the same or similar moments with the new physical traits of English speech. Now, turn off the tape again and work on the passage following the very advice contained in it. Okay. I hope you'll also follow the same advice in preparing any role requiring the standard English accent. Now we're going to do one more passage. It's a short song lyric from Gilbert and Sullivan's opera Patience. I shan't bother this time going word by word through it. You check the markings in the manual as I read. When I first put this uniform on, I said as I looked in the glass, "It's 1 to 1,000,000 that any civilian my figure and form will surpass. Gold lace has a charm for the fair, and I've plenty of that, and to spare. While a lover's professions, when uttered in Hessians, are eloquent everywhere, a fact that I counted upon when I first put this uniform on." Now let's explore a couple of broader variations on this standard British pattern. The first is the very stereotypic style of nobility or aristocratic speech. It's also a pattern used for the foppish characters in Restoration plays. It makes use of a heavier nasality. It pushes the lips and tongue even more than usual, and it really emphasizes the upward and downward glides. Listen. When I first put this uniform on, I said as I looked in the glass, it's 1 to 1,000,000 that any civilian my figure and form will surpass. Gold lace has a charm for the fair, and I've plenty of that, and to spare. While a lover's professions, when uttered in Hessians, are eloquent everywhere, a fact that I counted upon when I first put this uniform on. And another sort of stereotypic British sound you'll sometimes hear is the one Robert Morley frequently plays, the one often associated with military stereotypes. It's the character sort of puffs out his cheeks, you know, and lets his lips flop about a bit and says, "When I first put this uniform on, I said as I looked in the glass, it's 1 to 1,000,000 that any civilian my figure and form will surpass. Gold lace has a charm for the fair, and I've plenty of that, and to spare, while a lover's professions, when uttered in Hessians, are eloquent everywhere. A fact that I counted upon when I first put this uniform on." Be very careful of these stereotypes. Use them sparingly, and by all means, if you use them, follow the advice in the first drill passage and create characters who really talk this way because they have something to say. Now review everything on this tape as often as you'd like, then go out and have at it with your English accent.